Hello and welcome to what should be a relatively short lecture on democracy in the UK. As you can see there are a number of questions we need to answer. Big questions, I know, probably not enough time to do these in the time allotted, but we'll have a go. So we're going to look at what is democracy, what are the benefits of democracy, and is democracy always a good thing? So, what do we need to know? Some key concepts and terminology. You really need to know the difference between direct and representative democracy, which we'll be dealing with later. Suffrage and participation are relatively easy to understand. Partisan de-alignment is a very key concept to understand because it has real repercussions, as we've seen in the last few elections, especially in the 2019 one. We're also going to look at the history of the development of suffrage in the UK and the key debates and issues around those, and then finally looking at what are the key aspects of democracy and the different types. So, I'm not going to spend too much time looking at these. You can pause these and have a look at these yourself. As I've said to you, the key ones to understand are direct democracy and how it differs from representative democracy, partisan de-alignment, and make sure you understand the concepts of participation and suffrage. So, here is a very short definition there, but one of the key things we'll be looking at is what will be the effects of this de-alignment that has been going on over the past 50 years. So obviously here's an activity. I suggest you have a look at this, have a go at it yourself. Also find out what these key terms mean: authority, legitimacy, power, and sovereignty, and try and put them into some sort of UK context as well. And here we have the words themselves. So when we talk about legitimacy, it is about rightfulness. It's about conferring authority on action. I'm not going to go through all of these with you. You can obviously pause and look at these yourself and to make notes on them. Obviously, one of the key things here is when we relate it to politics and, for example, how far you're able to do things based on the vote. So, for example, if we look at the 2017 election, how far did the Conservative Party have legitimacy in pursuing its policies in contrast to the 2019 Conservative government? So what are the benefits of democracy? Here we see it has 5 key benefits. It protects freedom. It protects minorities. It controls government power. It encourages popular participation. And it disperses power more widely. But the point here is that it's particular types of democracy that can guarantee these. Not all do, as we're going to see. So when we look at what we mean by referenda, you need to think about 3 things. What do we mean by the state? What are the differences between a state and the state? And finally, what is government? The state is a country or territory that is sovereign and widely recognised as so. The UK, USA and India are states. The state is a set of permanent institutions within a country. It would normally include the armed forces, the secret police, the police, judiciary, prison, civil service, local councils. Going back to this concept of a state, the idea of sovereignty is a key one at the moment. Obviously, when we were in the EU, we ceded some concept or some amount of our sovereignty to the EU. Now we have withdrawn from the EU. We think we can work on ourselves and keep this idea of sovereignty much more in Westminster. How far that's going to be true will have to be seen. Some more ideas about what a government is. We've looked at these before. We've looked at the key ideas of the PM, the cabinet ministers, junior ministers, and political advisors. If you're not sure, go back and look at these concepts and ideas from your previous notes. And also, just to remember, most MPs and peers are not members of the government. They are members of the legislature. So when we look at the branches of government, as we've seen before, there is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Make sure you know the difference between those and what they are in the UK system. So when we're looking at referendums, we are looking here at how they function. What is a referendum? Quite clearly, it is the idea that the citizens, ordinary citizens, are asked to deliberate on a particular question. So for one particular area, we stop having representative democracy and we go to direct democracy. Okay, we are not used to this concept. Up until 1999, we had only had one referendum, and that was in 1975 about joining the EU. Since then, there have been a number of referendums, some with more impact than others. One's to do with whether there should be dispersal of power to Scotland and Wales, and then obviously the EU referendum in 2016. Other countries are far more used to the concept of referendums. For example, the USA, as you'll know, and Switzerland. What's also interesting is if you cross the border into Germany, they do not have national referendums. They see it as something that can lead to potentially quite authoritarian ideas, and they've obviously had their fingers burnt in the past about that. How do we get referendums? Well, we can do a variety of different things. E-petitions are something that is being practiced at the moment, and we may well have more and more other types of referendums. One popular idea that potentially could have impact in the future is the idea of people's assemblies, so that over one particular topic you get a representative group together, a small group, who will debate and discuss and then come up with 2 or 3 potential ideas, or maybe even resolve an idea and present it back to the legislative. Ireland did this over abortion, by the way. So here are some examples of referendums that have taken place. Some more information about e-petitions, how they work and how they have been used in UK government. Here's another activity you can do. A lot of this is taken up in the booklet that you've got, so you can do that there. So when we look at the concept of democracy, it's a word. It's a positive word. It's something we always give credence to because it's seen as something that gives us benefit. But the concept of democracy has changed and morphed over time. So when we look at the original Greek idea of democracy, it was one that was very, very narrow. Slaves obviously weren't allowed. Women weren't allowed. People who weren't members of the polity weren't allowed. Okay. Another activity there about the direct democracy. Find out a little bit more about it. Here is some more information. So Athenian democracy is a form of direct democracy. Obviously, we haven't got time to do this, but you can maybe look at this in your own time. So when is a referendum often called? Usually it's when a particular topic is has an impact over in the general population, and it seems too important for the politicians to make a decision on. How far that is the proper way to go about, since we do live in a representative democracy, is open to question. So here are some points for referendums. So this can help you in the booklet questions. I think it's on lesson 2. And arguments against democracy. Some more on for direct democracy. So use these. And here are some arguments again for direct democracy. And here are some against. And quite clearly, one of the key ones is complexity. As we've seen with the issue to do with the EU, there are many different layers that have been in, that needs to be sorted out before we can actually leave. So a lot of people thought that actually in 2016, just after we'd taken the actual referendum, that we actually had left for a number of people. It's not that they were stupid or thick. It's just that the idea of referendums isn't with something we're used to, and it probably hadn't been clearly explained to them. So, representative democracy, what do we mean by that? It's the form of democracy found on the exercise of popular sovereignty by the people's representatives. And we send people to do our bidding. Okay? This is, in our constitution, Burkean representation. Again, go back and look at that. Here are some arguments for. Please stop these, the actual film, and get an idea. Here are some of the weaknesses. Again, this will help you in your booklet. And again, here's an activity we won't have time for, but you can have a go maybe on your own. Here are arguments for, again, greater democracy, direct democracy. So, we've come to development of suffrage in the UK, debates and issues. I'm going to stop it there because we obviously haven't got time to complete this. I'll be picking this up in the second lecture, so please go on to that when you're ready.